you can tell how happy I am. I have spent most of the day in the sun. My desk is next to a south-facing window, and it feels like it has been so long since we here in southern Kansas have seen the sun. Welcome to my genealogy experiment. My name is Michelle Anderson. As always, you're probably going to hear my dogs. They are crazy and they think that I am talking to them. So maybe one day they will know that I'm not, but until then, you're probably going to hear them. And today you're probably going to hear the Chiefs-Ravens game, as it is now being broadcast in my living room. So how are your Master Ancestor Lists coming along? I hope that you are making them. I found 3 people this week to add to my list, and they were pretty high numbered too. But when I went to add them, I found an error. So last week when I told you that my highest number ancestor was like 888, well, it's not. The highest I can get currently is 496. But hey, I still think that's pretty good. I hope your lists are coming along, and a great place to go and work on them is your library. They are a wonderful place to do genealogy research. Many libraries have their own genealogy department and are full of local and national books to help you. Local genealogical societies, say that like 5 times fast, also have libraries, many of them attached to the society, and they are full of information as well. Many times their libraries include data from churches and schools, things that aren't as readily available in the public library. But members for genealogical societies usually get free library access, and guests to the societies are allowed to access the library after paying a small fee. My mother's family, some of them live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where there is an outstanding genealogy library. It's number 2 in the nation. It's so beautiful. And that is where one of my family books is located, the Borshite book. If I reference the Borshite book, that is the book I am speaking of. My ancestor Fred Borshite wrote a book, and my grandma thought to have it bound and placed in the library for all to reference. So the Fort Wayne Library is the number 2 library in the nation for genealogy. The only one better is the one found in Salt Lake City and is run by the Mormons. This library is what I feel Ancestry.com turned into, because they had all that information. So speaking of ancestry, I told you I'd talk about my woes. I really don't have anything against the Church of Latter-day Saints or Ancestry.com, Threefold, or Newspaper.com. The problem that I have is how expensive they make becoming a member so that you can have access to the information. I am just a basic tier member, and I pay about $240 a year to be a basic member. That means I only get access to things in the U.S. and not everything. If I want military records, they want me to join Threefold. I, on the other hand, know I can go to the National Archives and get most of that information for free. Newspaper records are controlled through newspaper.com. They want you to subscribe so that you can get all these wonderful newspaper articles. But to me, it's an expense that I really don't need. If you add on European access, that will run you about $500 a year. A year. My thought is, for $500, I can go to my library. As much as I reference it for my everyday ancestors stateside, though, being a basic member, I feel, will pay off and be okay. If you don't know me, I am a reader. I read 200 books last year. That's a pretty normal year for me. I have a very large number of ebooks, which I have not read yet, that are on my Kindle. So my dream this year is that I read from those books that I already own or check books out of the library. So I have put myself on a no spend in purchasing any future books. I've also been a subscriber to Kindle Unlimited, so I want to make it pay for itself as much as possible. The month that I don't read at least what it costs for me to subscribe to the service, I will be unsubscribing. How will I know, you ask? I have a spreadsheet for that. I love spreadsheets, not just for my genealogy stuff, but for my reading stuff as well. I am approaching my subscription to Ancestry.com in the same way. I haven't figured out the formula of how many hours I will need to research or how many days it turns out that I have to use it to get my money's worth for the month, but I'm going to figure that out. And hopefully it'll pay for itself. Speaking of research, I had a thought on Wednesday when I was doing some research into the Borshite family. When I first started this genealogy trip, no one told me that I was going to get invested in my ancestors. And it will hurt when I found out things about them. Either things that they have done or things that had happened to them. 2 times this week, I have felt like this. So I'm here to tell you, if you have never done family research before, there may be days that it will hurt. The information that you read will affect you in some way that will make it hard to go on, and you will need to walk away from the research and come back at a later time. And I am here to tell you that that is okay. Do that. Just make sure you come back. It is taking me a really long time to realize this, but I'm telling you that when you're faced with facts that are troubling, it's okay to take a break. I'm also going to tell you that if you have any books about your family that have been written by other members of your family, or maybe even someone outside of your family, you have been given a gift. Most of the story in these family books are better than the drama in any of the Housewife franchises or the Kardashians could ever dream up. Okay, so that was a little deep there, so I'm going to tell you a joke. My ancestors are so hard to find. How hard are they to find, you ask? They're so hard to find that they must have been in a witness protection program. Okay, that was a little cheesy. I'm sorry. Today's subject on the Jordans and Birds page had me turning to the Borshite book that our great Uncle Fred Borshite had put together. In it, he listed his father Peter's father and grandfather. Peter's father, his name was Franz Karl Borshite, and Fred wrote that Franz was a master furrier and foreman for the C. Theodor F. Koenig's cap and fur business in Cologne, Germany. There are a lot of German names, and I'm going to do my absolute best to pronounce them well. I'm going to try. I don't know. But after Mr. Koenig died, Franz married his widow. Her name was Christina J. Murbach, and she was 11 years his senior. Now, their union was a good thing. It resulted in the Koenig fur business prospering. And while married to Theodore, Christina had given birth to 11 children. So after he died and she married Franz, Christina gave birth to 3 more children. Franz Karl in 1851, Maria in 1853 and R. Peter Joseph in 1855. Franz Karl II later became Dr. Frank Borchardt when he moved to America. He was the father to Frank Jr. and Jean Borchardt, who were cousins to R. Frank Bird. We do not know the names, the statuses, if they lived, how long they lived, of any of the other children except one to have been born to Christina and Theodore. That one person is who I'm bringing to you today. Her name is Christina Koenig. Peter wrote on the back of the photograph that she was his stepsister. But I think a better term would have been his half-sister. Got a little ahead of myself there. She was the firstborn child of Christina and Theodore. And Peter had written that Elizabeth was his mother's first child, and he was number 14. He also wrote that she died in 1931 at the age of 97. By my estimation, that would mean that she had been born in 1834, when their mother was 22 years old. Elizabeth was 21 when our Peter was born. And I was really curious to see how old Peter was when he died. And he died at the age of 79 years old. So I don't know if she lived a healthier life than he did, or that maybe her life had less stress than his, but she definitely lived a longer life than her younger sibling. She's so beautiful, so amazing. This photo came from Germany, possibly with Peter when he came to America, and now resides with Aunt Ruth in Tucson, which I think is incredible. Based on the style of her bodice and skirt, I would estimate that this photograph to be from the mid to late 1860s, and what's on the back just validated my estimation. I didn't really look at what was on the back other than what Peter had written, and when I got to digging to what the print was on the back, I was like, oh, yeah, right on. She has some earrings, but I really can't tell based on her hair and maybe the lighting of the photograph, if they are earrings, or maybe it could be just her hair. I'm not too sure about that. Her eyes appear to be very fair, and if I had to guess, I'd say that they were blue. Elizabeth exhibits such a simple smile that it's not really present. I am sure that she would have had to sit still for a bit to get this photograph, which could have resulted in that simple facial expression. Her bodice appears to be made out of a velvet fabric, because to me it's giving the appearance of density and strength, unlike her skirt, which appears to be wool or linen. Adorning her bodice is a row of button-like embellishments that go around the cuffs, her collar, and down the middle of the bodice. When you put an embellishment like this down on a bodice, and that is placed so close together, they would often fasten the bodice together using another method, so it would not be buttons, because the spacing the buttons and the buttonholes was very difficult. As one who has done that, I'm here to tell you. So they would use things such as hook and eye fasteners to close up the bodice, so that when it was closed, you had this really nice straight line that the embellishment gave going down the bodice. She has placed a brooch at her neck, and there's a necklace of some length that finishes off her look. There is a knot then, or a ball, that joins the necklace into one chain. And when I followed that chain around, it looks to be attached to a chatelaine. I was so excited. Oh my gosh. A chatelaine was a decorative belt or a hook that was worn at the waist with a series of chains suspended from it. And each chain would be mounted with useful household appendages such as scissors or thimbles, watches, keys, smelling salts if need be. Sometimes women would attach a small notebook and pencil to ensure that they had something, they had paper for note taking. And they would attach it all to this chatelaine. I cannot tell you how happy it makes my costume researching heart to see one of our ancestors using this. Now, when I flipped the photograph over, I was really interested to read what it said. But it's in German, and I did not take German in school, so Google Translate it is. Google Translate has been my friend for many things in researching genealogy documents. I pulled it up and I translated what it said, and it reads as follows: price medal, because there's a medallion in the middle of the back of the photograph. And then it states, the International Photographic Exhibition to Berlin, 1865. Photographic Institution, number 19, Hochstrasse, Cathedral Monastery, opposite the West Portal. Yep, I typed it many, many times. And when you put Domkloster into the Google Translate, it translates that to Cathedral Monastery. And by cathedral, I mean the cathedral, the Cologne Catholic Cathedral, the Church of St. Peter, where our Peter would tell that he'd been baptized in this church, and I am sure that all of his family was baptized there. On my bucket list is a trip to Germany to find the records to prove this assumption. I would really like to tell you more about Elizabeth, but I do not know anything more than what Peter wrote on the back of this photograph, unfortunately. And I don't currently subscribe to the part of Ancestry.com in which you can access the European records. So I have placed the names of Theodore F. Koenig, Christina J. Murbach, and Elizabeth Koenig on my list to research when I can plan a day at the library. I don't know why Fred did not include Peter's half-siblings, as he included many in-laws in the Borchardt book. But I am very thankful for the information he compiled for us and future generations of the Borchardt lineage. While I could go on and on with all that Fred wrote in this book, I think I'm going to save that for another time. Until that time, or when I can report more about lovely Elizabeth here, I will be forever searching to increase our knowledge of our German-born Borchardts. Now, over on the Miller Garden page, I bring to you William Kramer and some of the stories that he told his children. William was the third child born to Carl and Doris Reuter Kramer. Both were natives of Hanover, Germany. My great-aunt Doris Chambers did not know when Carl arrived in America, as his naturalization paperwork had a big X over where that information should have been. They should have listed the ship that he was on and several other things. So that is on my bucket list of things that I hope to find someday. Now, Carl and Doris had 7 children, for a total of 10 children, with his daughter and son from his first wife and a daughter from her previous marriage. It is unfortunate that Carl died as a result of a sea tragedy on January 19, 1883. Doris suffered from poor health after that event, and she herself died December 6, 1889. Now, I tell you about Carl and Doris, so I can further tell you about William. My great aunt Doris Chambers, who is sister to my grandmother Eunice, took to the typewriter and wrote down many of the things her father William told them about his life. Without radio or television, most people would tell stories to entertain themselves after meals or before the end of the day. Aunt Doris included them in the Kramer family history, which she compiled. If you have a copy or can get one, I would encourage you to read it. There are many riveting stories included there. One of William's earliest memories concerned the first night that they spent on the Kramer farm in Livingston County. It was early spring in 1880, and he, along with his two brothers Charles and Herman, were bedded down on a feather bed in the loft of the barn. I believe William would have been about 7 years old at this time, and like most active children, they moved around a lot during their sleep. In fact, they moved around so much that they and the feather bed fell out of the loft. Fortunately, no one was hurt. William really enjoyed all the natural beauty of the Illinois prairie, and he lamented the loss of the natural prairie flowers. For when they took ownership of the land and they began to get neighbors around them, that meant that as farms and buildings were built, the loss of flowers, the loss of those habitats. And one of those habitats included natural prairie chickens. He said that during the laying season, you could gather a basket full of eggs in just a few minutes from all the natural chickens. This next story is a bit harsh by today's standards, but it shows a time of discipline by their father to William. So one day, there was a dead rabbit that was discovered in the open well there on the farm. Carl was unable to reach it, so he wanted to get William and let him down by his ankles to get it. William empathetically refused to assist his father in any way, so his brother Charles offered to go instead. He was let down, he got the rabbit secured, and they pulled him and the rabbit out of the well. Now, their father was determined to be obeyed, so he threw William in the well. But I think that Carl felt some distress over what he had just done, because really he realized that if William were to clutch onto the reinforcing beams of the well, he might not come up. So Carl was prepared to jump in and get him back out, but William came back up and was pulled out to safety. Another of the stories that William would tell involved a mystery. One day, a young man stopped at their house asking for lunch. And while he ate, he told of a neighbor who had refused him anything to eat. So as he was leaving, he put a curse on her. At the time, she'd been churning butter, and he cursed her that she would never be able to gather butter in that cream, nor any she would churn. So the next day, the lady comes to their mother carrying her cream, and she said she couldn't get the butter to come. So Doris, William's mother, takes the cream, churns it briefly, and the butter came. As far as William knew, the neighbor was never again able to make butter. These are just a few of the stories that Aunt Doris Chambers compiled for us. What a beautiful, wonderful gift she has given us. We will always have them to remember William and his life. There are many more stories in the Kramer history book, and I plan on showcasing them throughout the year for your enjoyment. Thank you, Aunt Doris, for all your hard work and your wonderful writing. Today, over on the 6 Degrees of Anderson page, I have a really cute photo of Dick and Sherry Gay at a formal dance. Well, what I think is a formal dance. I have found many of these photos of Dick dressed up and out socializing, whether it was with Sherry Gay or Fran. He really seemed to love going out. I am not sure about dating etiquette in the 1950s, but I think they're attending a formal dance, possibly for school. And I love how there are empty Pepsi Cola bottles on the table. It also appears that there is a camera just there behind the bottles. What the bowls on the table are for is a total mystery. They could have been there for dinner, but maybe they were there for snacks. I'm not so sure. At any rate, Dick looks very handsome in his white suit coat and his black tie. And Sherry Gay is lovely in a baby blue formal gown, which appears to be sporting a fuchsia orchid corsage. I just wish we could see more of their outfits. And their table mates are so cute too. The young woman appears trying to not look at the camera, but she is looking at the camera, and so she's going to smile because she's looking at the camera. Her date is there, and he's just talking away, possibly to friends that are across the table from him. So even though they aren't dancing in the photo, it is a lovely reminder to get out of the house for a night out with your date, your spouse, your friends, and enjoy life. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that the game was not too distracting in the background. And for all those that are wondering, the Chiefs won. I hope you have enjoyed your time with me as much as I have enjoyed making this podcast. Please make sure that you're subscribed, that you like, and feel free to share it with anyone you know who might enjoy my ramblings. Join me each week as I discuss those photos I posted in the family blogs and maybe some other stuff as well. We'll see where this genealogy road takes us. My name's Michelle Anderson. Thank you so much for listening. I am the link to the past and a bridge to the future. Have a great day.